Hey guys, here is your formula sheet. You will be able to use this sheet, so take a minute, snapshot, hit pause. We're going to be using these questions all through multiple choice questions and free response questions. So here's the bottom of the sheet. So take a look. Okay, so if you're in 8th period, you probably are working out of the new textbook, and we're going to do the questions right out of the book. If you're working out of the old textbook, you'll have to check out the other video. So let's turn to chapter 8 and look at the practice test on chapter 8. Okay, so here it is. This is the same multiple choice question in both editions. So if that kind of throws you off, sorry. So let's do it. It says a Gallup poll interviewed 1,600 people. So I'm just gonna kind of write out how I would do this. So N is 1,600. And of these people, 18%, so that's your sample proportion, said they jog regularly. The news report adds that the poll has a margin of error of plus or minus 3 percentage points. They did a 95% confidence interval. Okay. So this is actually kind of like what I'm writing while I'm reading the question. And then what's interesting, it says you can safely conclude what? So now it's actually a question about what is a confidence level. When you do all this, what does that mean? So what it means is that if we did a whole bunch of samples just like this one, we're going to get little samples, little nets with an average and a plus or minus, an average, a plus or minus, an average plus or minus, an average plus or minus, an average plus or minus, just like we did in class, right? And so we're going to do a bunch of these, and then 95% of the time, each of these would capture this, and we have to imagine that would be the true proportion. So that would be a capital P, a true proportion, right? Meaning that if we did a bunch of these, some would actually fall a little out of play here. And that's exactly what happened when we did a few activities in class, okay? So our best answer here is A. So again, for good practice, I would suggest writing out the right answer because we have to memorize this. 95% of all Gallup poll samples, like this one, would give an answer within plus or minus 3% of the true. And so this pink line is the true population value. Okay. So what's wrong with B? It says the percent of population is certain to be within that. That makes no sense. So B's no sense. C, 95% of the population. No, that's not, it's not 90%, 5% of the population jogs in this thing. And the other maybe jogs totally different numbers. So C also doesn't make sense. D, we can be 95% confident that the sample proportion captured the confidence interval. No. Okay, it sounds kind of good, but we're 95% confident that the sample captures, we're 95% confident that the interval from blank to blank, right, captures the true proportion. Not captures the true confidence interval, we don't capture a confidence interval. We capture this, we capture the truth. And of these nets, how many of these nets capture the truth? So we capture the true proportion. We don't capture a confidence interval. So that's kind of what's wrong with that wording in D. E, if we took many samples, I like that part, 95% of them would find that 18% of them jogged. No. 95% of them would capture the true proportion. So E kind of goes off on a tangent there. So E kind of goes off on a tangent. Starts off good and then falls off the truck there. Okay, 8.2. It says a confidence interval for a difference of proportion is, okay, so what's the point of? It says, what's the margin of error? So we have some notes in there. We just find the middle. So I think one of them is like A plus B divided by 2, because that's the average. So let's do that. Be careful with the negative. So okay, so the number exactly in the middle is, so I'm not just going to subtract these two. So all right, so I just subtracted those two and I got 45. Let me add these two, make sure I get 45. Yep, give 45. Okay. That's it. So that's the point estimate. Plus or minus that would create that. So let's see if any of our choices here. It says, what is the point estimate? So we cross out D and E. What is the margin of error? My answer is A. Next one, 8.3. A random sample of 100 students. Let me give myself a little bit more room so you can see the problem. And my notes. Okay. So a random sample of 100 students. 100 students from a high school. 37 regularly bring water bottles from home. Which of the following gives the correct value interpretation of the standard error of the sample proportion? Okay, so we're doing a sample proportion. So P hat is 37 out of 100, right? So they want to know what would give the interpretation of the standard error. So we look back here and we say, oh, okay, so what's standard error of a proportion? Standard error of a proportion is when we merely find this standard deviation and we use it to multiply with the z-score to find our margin of error. Okay, so what is it? And you know, another really good question is how would you calculate it? So you'd calculate it with your proportion, which we have, and 1 minus that, so that'd be 63, right? All over N is our 100. So if I calculate that, okay. So kind of glancing at my answers, I get 0.048. So it looks like I like B and I like D. Okay, B and D. Let's look at D here. It says, in a sample of 100, the sample proportion of students who bring reusable waters from home typically varies by about, yeah, that's how much the sample. So this standard error of the sample. So this is how much we're predicting this sample amount will vary. Okay. So what was, D is definitely our answer. Well, what was wrong with B? So looking back here at B, it says, in the sample size, the sample proportion of students who bring usable waters home will be at most. No. That's not right. Okay, so definitely D. All right, let's look at 84. Or 8.4, however you want to say it. Many TV viewers doubt the validity of commercials and attempt to answer their critics. They wish to estimate the true proportion of all customers who believe that Timex, what is shown in the commercial. Which of the following is the smallest number? So I'm going to solve for N. we can guarantee a margin of error. Okay, so our margin of error is 0.05 and or less for a 99% confidence interval. Awesome. So using our formula sheet, I'm answering a yes or no because I'm doing a proportion, and there's my formula for margin of error. So I'm just going to copy that down. From my formula sheet, margin of error is C star times P hat, 1 minus P hat, all over N. We know margin of error is this. We know Z star is from the table. So it's P hat, it's Z star. So Z stars are these values down here. And it says I need to be 99% confident. So I'm using 2.576. 2.576 for the table. Okay, so what's my P hat? They didn't really say they knew anything, so we assume indifference, meaning 50-50. Half people say yes, half of people say no, until we know any more. Okay, so that's it. We're gonna use algebra to solve. So a couple ways to do this. If I just divide this on both sides, that goes away. Right? And then I'm going to square both sides. And now this side turns into just 0.25 over n. Okay, so I divide that and I square that. All right, then whatever this stuff is, I want to switch places with it and n. So I'm going to rewrite that over here. N is equal to 0.25 times all this stuff. Okay, all that stuff right there. Okay, and I have that saved in my calculator. So now I'm going to do n is equal to 0.25 divided by that stuff. 0.25 divided by that stuff. Okay, I get this. Now we have to use a little logic. So we will have asked enough people if we ask that amount of people, but that's not, so I'm gonna have to ask 664 people because I can't ask a proportion of person. So now it says, which would be the least? So if we look at this here, that's not enough, that's not enough, that's not enough, right? That's plenty. So these would work, but what's the least amount? So I got to stick, if those are my only choices, I got to stick with 700 people. Check out the next video for the other questions.